So I've gone ahead and I've added a few more animations and even a new model. As you can see, I just brought in this model. It's made for current 495 project, and I brought it in and brought in its textures. You can look up on Unity if you want to bring in your own custom rig. So the cool thing that I wanted to talk about was transferring animations between rigs, and here I can do that. So I brought in the T-Pose guy rig, and I've brought in a T-Pose Mixamo rig, so that I could bring in some Mixamo animations like this thriller dance, right? And you can see it's already playing on the new animation, or the new character. So I brought those in. All I did was I brought in this T-Pose character right here, and I created its avatar. I also brought in this T-Pose character and created its avatar. And now, since the avatars are created, it knows how to transfer animations between all of them. So this character right here that I have selected and it's in the viewport doesn't have any animations. Nobody's ever animated this character, at least not the file that I have. And so I'm going to transfer animations onto it. And this is the point of your asset packs, is that you want to create animation asset packs for Unity so that you could potentially use them in a game, or you could put them up on the asset store, you could put them up on your website, people could download them and apply them to their own models. It's great, right? So now I want to show you guys how to show this off. So I've got I've got two animations linked up, and they're not the best combo of animations, and I'm going to show you to recreate this. But I've got the thriller animation, and then I've got a bat swing, and I've set it up so that when I hit play, and I think this should be it'll maximize. So I'm going to hit play, and now it maximizes my game scene, and I get an overhead view of this animation. It goes through the thriller animation, which is pretty long, but I think it looks great on this model. And then at the end of the animation, you'll see that it does the bat swing, and it actually slides back to the root position and does the bat swing. So that's, like I was saying, it's not the best combo, especially that thriller dance isn't really set up the best for game animation. So I'm going to show you guys how to set up these animations and the scene so that you could show them off. So the first thing we need to do is we need to set up this scene. So I have this scene right here. I'm just going to save it, demo 1, and I'm going to make a new scene, right? Blank empty scene, has a light, has a camera, everything. So first we want a ground plane. So I'm going to go into the hierarchy, which is basically the outliner, like I said in the previous video. Go to create, 3D object, and plane. Now, unfortunately with Unity, when you create 3D objects, they kind of go into an arbitrary space based on the position of your camera. So if I were to look over here and make a plane, it's going to go over here, which isn't 0, 0, 0. So select this first plane, and you'll notice over here it has a transformation position just like Maya, and I'm just going to go 0, 0, 0, right? Okay. So now I want to bring in the character that I want animated, and I'm going to bring in the Andy rig. So I'm just going to drag this, and I could drag it in a 3D space and place it where I want it, but if I drag it into the hierarchy, it does show up at 0, 0, 0. It doesn't care about where my camera is positioned. I know, weird. So I have my character, and like Maya, you can press F to focus in on them. So I'm going to focus in, and I don't like the lighting, because the character is currently facing this direction, and the lighting's hitting their backside. So I'm going to select the light. You can select it in the 3D view by just clicking the thing that looks like a sun, or you can go into the hierarchy and click the directional light. And then I'm just going to rotate it like normal. Again, very much like Maya. And if you wanted to mess with any other light settings, you can do so over here in the inspector. So you can change the color, the intensity, all that stuff. But I'm just going to leave mine at default. Because Unity uses a PBR environment for its 3D, you'll notice that when I move the light around, it affects the skybox. it actually changes the time of day. So you can't rotate it too extreme, at least not by default. So I have my character set up, and I'm going to hit play. There's not going to be any animations on here, but I just want to see where the camera is. That's not great. So I want to be able to see these animations. I would actually like the camera to be about here. This is a great spot to view all of my animations. It's far enough away that the character has some breathing room for any large animations, but it gives me a good vision. So I could go in and grab this camera and sort of manually move it. You can see a preview over here, so if I move this camera, I can try and reposition it. But the great thing about Unity, or at least one of the cool features, is that if I select this main camera and then go to the game object menu up here, I could do align with view. And that's going to move that camera so that you could see it shows up right where I want it. It's actually a little bit further out than I want, so now I'm just going to go in, zoom out, fine tune it, squeeze it in. So now when I go to the game view, it looks like this. Still though, when I hit play, there's still no animations. And the way that I get that maximized when I hit play is just making sure that this right here is highlighted. If your play isn't maximized when you're in play mode, you can just go to this drop down and hit maximize, but then you have to undo it. So I like maximize on play. So now we need to set up what's going to actually make our character move. So let's actually look at the character in the outliner. You can select them. You can see right now it says animator. This is what's going to drive your character, right? So right now there's an animator. It says controller, none. There's no animation controller. The avatar, it picks up just fine, but we haven't made an animation controller yet. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. You're going to go back down to the assets folder, and you right click. This brings up a new menu. At the top is create, and in the create folder you can go to animation controller. And for this we're going to call this Andy NMC. Now I have an animation controller. But it doesn't do anything yet because we haven't told it to do anything. And if you notice in this vector, there's actually no settings. So you actually have to double click this one and bring up the animator window. This is what is called an animation state machine. And this drives all of the animations for games. What this is going to do is it's going to let a programmer tell the animation controller what state a character is in and tell it whether to jump, whether to swim, whether to idle, whatever. This is what's going to control the life of the animation. But we only have a few animations, so I'm going to bring them in one by one. So, like the rig T-pose and the bat swing that I showed off in the previous video, you can click these little triangles down here in the assets window that will expand the properties of this. And the one with the giant square or giant rectangle and play button is the actual animation. So what I want to do is I want to drag this into that state machine. So I'm going to click on the bat swing. I'm going to drag it in here. And since it's the first animation, it loads in by default as bat swing, right? So right now, this is going to be the first animation the character performs. This is the default animation. This is not what you would want as the default animation. Normally you would want an idle. So I'm going to get rid of the bat swing. And I'm going to expand this idle that I imported. It's one of the Mixamo rigs and animations, and I'm going to bring that in. Unfortunately, these are all named Mixamo. I could go set that up, change that to idle. There we go. So since the idle is still selected, I can change it right here, so I can actually read that. Because otherwise, if I brought in boxing or dying, it would say the same name. So now the idle is going to be the default. And I'm going to go back to the scene real quick. So now animator is a tab up here until we close it. I'm going to click on Andy, and I'm going to take this Andy Anim controller, and I'm going to put it in the controller. So I'm just going to drag it from assets all the way over here. Now when I hit play, it's going to idle. It's not going to do much else, but it's going to idle. Because now it has an animation controller that tells it by default you need to idle. So now, let's get the rest of the animations in there. So I'm going to go back to Animator. I'm going to go to Boxing, bring in that animation. Again, this one isn't named, so I'll go to Boxing. And to hook this up, I need to click on here, right-click idle, make translation to Boxing. So now those are hooked up, but we want to figure out how it's going to blend the animations. And this little line right here will tell us exactly that. So we can expand this menu, and this is going to show us how our animations blend. So it's going to play through the idle, and then in the last couple seconds, it's going to blend over to Boxing. And we can get rid of that if we want. We could totally bring this over here. Just bring this blend out and bring that over there. So now it'll idle, and then for a couple of frames it won't animate, and then it'll go into Boxing very abruptly. See how it snaps? Or we can have Boxing play in the middle of idle, so we can have idle, and then it sort of goes through. Oh wait, I haven't actually made the blend, so it'll go about halfway through idle. It's going to switch over to Boxing, but it's never going to fully go into Boxing. It's just going to take the pose. So it's up to you how you want to display these. I would say probably a small blend at the end. It's going to show off your stuff the best. So it's going to blend into Boxing. Okay, cool. So let's add another one. So I'm going to close this window by clicking that arrow again. I'm going to close the idle one, and I'm going to click on Dying. Bring that one in. Rename it. Right click on Boxing, make a transition from Boxing, and click on the transition. Make sure that there's a little bit of time at the end of Boxing, that this isn't awkward. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to go back to the scene, hit play again. It's going to idle for a little bit, but doesn't do anything else. Yep, goes right into Boxing and then right into Dying. See how those were kind of abrupt? So you might want to play with those transitions, and you can go back to those by turning off play, going to Animator, clicking on these, and instead we could have Boxing and transition after, right? So now that's updated. We can hit play again, and now it'll idle, and then it'll stop animating for a little bit, and then it'll go abruptly into Boxing. But since there is no transition, the rig sort of just snaps there. But that could be a good way to show off each individual animation, because the snap will let people know that it's a new one. But it's up to you. So what you guys need to do from here is basically set up your scene and your animator with a chain showing off each animation. So if you have 10 different animations, you're going to start with a chain. And I would start with the animation that you have closest to an idle, because it's going to be the most default. And then just go down and add these transitions. You just always want to go from the next one, because we're just trying to show these off in a view. In a real game, we would have this idle, and it would be able to transition between Boxing and Dying, and you would make another transition like this. But since we're not doing a game, and a character doesn't have to go from one animation to hundreds of other animations, no worries, we just need to go from one animation to another. And then you'll go to your scene, make sure your game maximizes, and then you can capture this little section of the scene with something like Shadow Play or Open Broadcaster. It's your choice, so that you can get that video. Alright guys, have fun.